My name is Brooke. I'm 27 years old, and I've always been close with my dad, especially after my parents divorced when I was 12. 3 years ago, he married Stephanie. At first, everything was fine, but lately she's been obsessed with fixing my life. Last week, I finally snapped and told her I'm not her do-over daughter. Now my dad is furious with me, and I can't help wondering if I crossed a line. Before I dive into this story that's been keeping me up at night, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to set boundaries with family. Growing up, I was lucky enough to have parents who, despite their differences, always put me first. Their divorce when I was 12 was actually pretty amicable. There were no screaming matches or custody battles that traumatized me like some of my friends experienced. They simply recognized they had grown apart and made the mature decision to end things before resentment set in. I lived primarily with my mum in our family home, but Dad made sure he remained a constant in my life. He bought a place just 15 minutes away and had me every weekend. Those weekends became something I looked forward to. We'd make pancakes on Saturday mornings, go hiking when the weather was nice, or have movie marathons when it rained. As I navigated the awkward teenage years, Dad was my rock, always listening without judgment when I rambled about high school drama or my latest crush. When I was 24, Dad called me sounding more excited than I'd heard him in years. He had met someone named Stephanie at a charity golf tournament, and they'd hit it off immediately. I was thrilled for him. Mum had remarried when I was in college, and I'd always hoped Dad would find someone too. The first time I met Stephanie, she was warm and engaging. At 42, she was stylish and confident, working as a successful real estate agent in the city. She asked thoughtful questions about my life and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. I remember thinking how natural she and Dad seemed together, how his eyes lit up when she entered a room. Their relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, Dad proposed, and 3 months after that, they were married in a beautiful ceremony at a vineyard outside the city. I was one of Stephanie's bridesmaids, which I took as a wonderful gesture of inclusion. Standing beside her on the wedding day, I felt hopeful about our future as a blended family. There were a few moments during wedding preparations that in retrospect might have been early warning signs. Stephanie had strong opinions about how I should wear my hair for the ceremony and brought me a dress that wasn't what we had originally discussed. "This will look so much better with your complexion, sweetie," she insisted. At the time, I brushed it off as wedding stress and wanting everything to be perfect. After the wedding, I continued building my career as a graphic designer at a marketing firm in the city. I loved my job. It was creative, challenging, and allowed me to work with diverse clients. I had my own apartment, not fancy, but comfortable, decorated exactly how I wanted, with an eclectic mix of vintage finds and modern pieces. My life felt settled in a good way. My closest friends, Madison and Tyler, were regularly at my place for wine nights or weekend brunches. Madison and I had been friends since college, and Tyler joined our circle when he started dating Madison's roommate. Even after that relationship ended, our friendship remained solid. They were my chosen family, the people who knew all my quirks and loved me anyway. About a month after the wedding, Dad and Stephanie invited me over for dinner. As we sat in their living room afterward, I noticed several framed photos I hadn't seen before. Most were of Dad and Stephanie, but one caught my eye. A younger Stephanie with her arm around a teenage girl who looked vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place why. When I asked about the photo, there was an uncomfortable pause before Stephanie said, "That's my daughter Amber. She's not really in the picture anymore." The abrupt way she changed the subject left me curious, but I didn't press. Later, when I mentioned it to Dad in the kitchen, he simply said, "It's a sensitive topic for Stephanie. They had a falling out some years ago." I had no idea then how significant that brief exchange would become in understanding what was to unfold in the coming months. The first real sign that something was off came about 2 months after the wedding. I had just gotten home from work on a Friday when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Stephanie standing there with 2 large shopping bags and a determined smile. "Surprise!" she exclaimed, walking past me into my apartment. I was in this adorable home decor store downtown and saw these pieces that would be perfect for your living room. That wall has been bare for too long. Before I could respond, she was pulling out framed prints, decorative pillows, and a throw blanket, all in colours that, while beautiful, weren't really my style. I tried to be appreciative, saying the items were lovely, but explaining I had actually been planning something different for that space. "Oh, honey," she laughed already, hanging one of the prints. "Trust me, this will look so much better than whatever you were thinking. I have an eye for these things." I felt a twinge of annoyance, but reminded myself she was trying to be nice. When she left, I moved the items around to better fit my taste, feeling slightly guilty but also unsettled by the interaction. The following week, Stephanie texted asking for my sizes. Before I could ask why, she showed up at my office with shopping bags from expensive boutiques I could never afford. Your dad mentioned you have a presentation next week, so I picked out some options that will really make you look professional, she explained, pulling out blouses and blazers in muted tones. They were nice clothes, but nothing like what I usually wore. My personal style leaned toward vintage-inspired pieces with bold colors that expressed my creative personality. Thanks, Stephanie, but I already have my outfit planned, I said carefully. Her smile tightened. Brooke, honey, first impressions matter. The clothes you usually wear are cute, but not what someone in a corporate environment should present themselves in. I was taken aback. My workplace was actually quite casual, and my boss specifically appreciated my eye for design in all aspects, including my personal style. I tried explaining this, but Stephanie dismissed my comments with a wave. Just try them on, you'll see I'm right. That evening, I called Dad, hoping he might talk to Stephanie about respecting my choices. Instead, he sighed and said, "She's just trying to help, kiddo. Would it kill you to wear one of the tops she bought? It would mean a lot to her." I felt a strange mix of frustration and guilt. Was I being ungrateful? Was this normal stepmother behavior that I was overreacting to? The pattern continued over the next few months. Stephanie would show up unannounced at my apartment, offering to help reorganize my closet or suggest improvements to my furniture arrangement. She'd make comments about my friends, suggesting Madison was too negative and that Tyler was taking advantage of my kindness. She questioned my career choices, wondering aloud if I wouldn't be happier in a more stable industry. Each time I tried to establish a boundary, she would look hurt, and Dad would call later, asking me to just go along with it, to keep the peace. The situation came to a head during Thanksgiving dinner at their house. After the meal, Stephanie presented me with a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate gold locket with intricate engravings. "This has been in my family for generations," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's meant to be passed down from mother to daughter." The table fell silent. I didn't know how to respond. It was a beautiful gesture on the surface, but something about it felt wrong. This wasn't a birthday or Christmas gift. It felt laden with meaning I wasn't sure I was comfortable with. "Thank you," I said finally, not knowing what else to say. Later that night, I met Madison and Tyler at our favorite bar and told them what happened. "That's intense," Madison said, stirring her drink thoughtfully. "It almost sounds like she's trying to replace her actual daughter with you." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, you said there was that picture of her daughter who's not in the picture anymore, right? And now she's giving you family heirlooms meant for daughters. It feels like she's trying to fill a void." Tyler nodded in agreement. "Have you tried asking your dad more about what happened with her real daughter?" I hadn't, partly because it seemed invasive, but Madison and Tyler's observations made me realize I needed more information. The next day, I visited Dad and Stephanie's house, when I knew Stephanie would be at work. Dad was reluctant to talk about it at first, but eventually admitted that Stephanie's relationship with her daughter had been strained for years before ending in complete estrangement. He didn't know all the details, just that Amber had accused Stephanie of being controlling and had cut contact when she turned 18 about 7 years ago. As I was leaving, I noticed more family photos I hadn't seen before. In one, the teenage girl, Amber, was smiling at the camera. With a chill, I realized why she had looked vaguely familiar when I first saw her picture. While we didn't look exactly alike, we shared similar features. The same heart-shaped face, similar coloring, even comparable fashion sense, from what I could tell in the photo. I left my dad's house that day with a growing sense of unease. It was becoming clear that Stephanie wasn't just being an overzealous stepmother. There was something more complicated happening, and I was somehow caught in the middle of it. The next time I saw Dad alone, I decided to directly ask about Amber. We were at our favorite diner, the place we used to go for Saturday breakfasts when I was a teenager. I hoped the familiar setting would make the conversation easier. "Dad, I need to know more about Stephanie's daughter," I said after our food arrived. "Things have been getting weird, and I think it might help me understand what's going on." Dad pushed his eggs around his plate, clearly uncomfortable. "It's not really my story to tell, Brookie. I know, but it's affecting me now. Please." He sighed deeply. Stephanie and Amber had a complicated relationship. Stephanie was a single mum working hard to give Amber everything. Maybe she pushed too hard, I don't know. She had specific ideas about who Amber should become, what college she should attend, what career she should pursue. And Amber didn't want those things, I prompted when he fell silent. No, she wanted to study art travel. Stephanie thought that was impractical, a waste of Amber's potential. They fought constantly during Amber's high school years. Then when Amber turned 18, she left for a gap year in Europe. She never really came back. She's in Barcelona now, I think. They haven't spoken in years. Does Stephanie try to contact her? Dad's expression grew sad. She did at first. Emails, calls. Amber blocked her eventually. It broke Stephanie's heart. She blames herself, thinks she was too controlling, but also believes she was just trying to give Amber the best chance at success. Everything was starting to make horrible sense. Dad, do you think Stephanie sees me as some kind of second chance, a do-over daughter? He looked startled, then defensive. She cares about you, Brooke. She's just trying to be motherly. But I already have a mother, and I'm 27, not 17. I don't need mothering, especially not the kind that involves trying to change everything about me. Dad reached across the table and took my hand. Just be patient with her, okay? She's still healing from losing Amber. I think having you in her life has been good for her. His words sent a chill through me. It wasn't my responsibility to heal Stephanie's pain or be a replacement for her estranged daughter. But looking at Dad's pleading expression, I nodded reluctantly. I would try to be understanding while still maintaining my boundaries. That resolution became increasingly difficult as Stephanie's behaviour escalated. The next weekend, she showed up at my apartment while I was out getting coffee and used the emergency key Dad had to completely reorganise my kitchen cabinets. When I returned, she was throwing away a box of mementos from college that she deemed childish clutter. These are my things, I protested, rescuing concert tickets and photos from the trash. You can't just throw them away. Brooke, part of growing up is letting go of the past, she said, in a condescending tone that made my blood boil. I'm just helping you mature your space. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was a hair salon confirming my appointment for the following day, an appointment I had never made. When I questioned this, Stephanie smiled proudly. I scheduled you a cut and colour with my stylist. Your hair has been looking a bit uninspired lately. I think a sleek bob would be much more professional. I cancelled the appointment as soon as she left, then spent an hour putting my kitchen back the way I wanted it. The invasion of my space left me feeling violated and increasingly anxious about what boundaries she would cross next. The situation reached a new level of tension during a dinner at an upscale restaurant to celebrate Dad's promotion. As we discussed my recent projects at work, Stephanie cut in. You know, Brooke, designing logos and websites is fine for now, but you should really be thinking about your long-term career path. Creative fields are so unstable. I explained that I loved my job and had recently been given more responsibilities, indicating potential for advancement. Stephanie smiled tightly. That's nice, dear, but you're getting to an age where you should focus on security rather than fun. You still have time to make better choices than Amber did. The table went silent. It was the first time Stephanie had mentioned Amber in front of me. Dad looked alarmed, but Stephanie continued as if she hadn't said anything unusual. I know a wonderful woman who runs the marketing department at my friend's financial services company, much more stable than your current place. I could introduce you. My career is not up for discussion, I said firmly, trying to keep my voice even. I appreciate your concern, but I'm happy where I am. Stephanie looked like she wanted to argue, but Dad quickly changed the subject. Later, as we were leaving the restaurant, I overheard Stephanie introducing me to an acquaintance they ran into. This is my girl, Brooke, she said, her arm around my shoulders. She's in graphic design right now, but we're working on finding her a more suitable position. The casual ownership in her voice, my girl, combined with the dismissal of my career, sent a wave of discomfort through me. It was becoming increasingly clear that Stephanie didn't see me as an individual with my own identity and choices. She saw me as a project. A second chance to succeed where she felt she had failed with Amber. The strain was affecting my relationship with Dad too. Our once easy conversations had become tense. When we spoke alone, the topic of Stephanie dominated. I would express my discomfort with her behaviour, and he would defend her or ask me to be more understanding. I found myself looking forward to our time together less and less, which broke my heart. The worst part was the anxiety I began to feel about family gatherings. I would spend days beforehand preparing mentally for Stephanie's comments and unsolicited advice. My friends noticed the change in me. You seem on edge lately, Madison observed during one of our wine nights. Is it still the Stephanie situation? I nodded, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest when I thought about the upcoming holiday dinner. It's exhausting constantly defending my choices and my space, and Dad just doesn't see it. Maybe it's time to be more direct with both of them. Tyler suggested. Set some clear boundaries about what's acceptable and what's not. I knew they were right, but I was afraid of damaging my relationship with Dad permanently. Little did I know things were about to come to a breaking point, whether I was ready or not. The line was finally crossed when my boss called me into his office one Tuesday afternoon. Roger had always been supportive of my work, so I was surprised by his uncomfortable expression as I sat down. "Brooke, I received an unusual call yesterday." He began adjusting his glasses nervously. "A woman identifying herself as your stepmother wanted to discuss your career trajectory." My stomach dropped. "What did she say?" "She suggested you might be better suited for our account management team rather than creative work. She implied you had expressed dissatisfaction with your current role, but were too shy to bring it up directly." Mortification washed over me. This wasn't just boundary crossing anymore. Stephanie had potentially jeopardized my professional reputation. Roger thankfully seemed more concerned than annoyed. "I know this isn't how you operate, Brooke. You've always been direct and communicative. I just wanted you to be aware." I apologized profusely and explained the situation briefly. Roger was understanding, but as I left his office, my embarrassment turned to anger. This had gone too far. That evening, I drove to Dad and Stephanie's house determined to address what had happened. I found them in the kitchen, preparing dinner, looking like the picture-perfect couple. "Stephanie, did you call my boss yesterday?" I asked without preamble. She turned from the stove smiling. "Yes, I was just trying to help. You mentioned being frustrated with that packaging design project, and I thought perhaps your talents would be better utilized in a different capacity." I never said I was frustrated with my role. I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, "I love what I do, and even if I didn't, it would never be appropriate for you to contact my workplace." Stephanie's expression hardened slightly. "Brooke, sometimes young people don't know what's best for their futures. I'm just trying to guide you toward better opportunities." "I don't need your guidance. I need you to respect my autonomy and my boundaries." "Boundaries?" she scoffed. "We're family. There shouldn't be boundaries between us." "We're not that kind of family, Stephanie. You're my father's wife, not my mother." Stephanie flinched as if I'd slapped her. Dad stepped between us, his expression pained. "Brooke, that's enough. Stephanie was just trying to help. By interfering with my job, how would either of you feel if I called your bosses and suggested career changes?" Stephanie shook her head dismissively. "That's different. We're established in our careers. You're still figuring things out." "I'm 27, not 17. My career is established." "Well," Stephanie said, her tone suddenly bitter, "I'm not making the same mistakes with you that I made with Amber." The room went silent. The words hung in the air between us, a confirmation of everything I'd suspected. I wasn't Brooke to her. I was a second chance at motherhood, a do-over opportunity. Dad looked startled by Stephanie's admission. "Steph, that's not..." "Not what?" I interrupted. "Not what this is about, because it sure seems like it is." I turned to leave, needing space to process what had just happened. "Brooke, wait," Dad called. "Let's talk about this calmly." But I couldn't stay. I needed time to think, to decide how to address this revelation. I drove home in a daze, my thoughts racing. The situation escalated further 2 days later when I returned from a lunch break to find several missed calls from both Dad and Stephanie. When I finally returned Stephanie's call, she was agitated. "I stopped by your apartment to drop off some things, but your key doesn't work anymore." I had changed my locks the day after our confrontation, a precaution that now seemed entirely justified. I didn't want anyone entering my apartment without my permission. "This is ridiculous, Brooke. I was just trying to help. I brought over a new comforter set that would look much better than that bohemian thing you have now." The conversation devolved from there, with Stephanie insisting she was just being thoughtful and me trying to explain why her actions were inappropriate. We ended the call with nothing resolved. That weekend, I met Madison and Tyler at our favorite coffee shop, feeling emotionally drained from the ongoing conflict. She actually admitted it. I told them, recounting Stephanie's slip about not making the same mistakes with me. She's literally trying to redo her relationship with her daughter through me. Madison reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "That's seriously messed up, Brooke. You know this isn't your responsibility to fix, right? Her issues with her daughter aren't about you." Tyler nodded in agreement. "Have you thought about taking a step back from them both for a while? Sometimes distance can provide clarity." "I've thought about it," I admitted, "but I'm worried about my relationship with Dad. We've always been so close, and this is already causing a rift." "Your dad is an adult who's choosing to enable her behavior," Madison pointed out gently. "That's not on you to fix either." As we continued talking, I realized my friends were right. I needed to stand firmly in my own identity and refuse to be molded into someone else's ideal daughter. The next time Stephanie crossed a line, I wouldn't back down or leave to avoid confrontation. I would stand my ground. I didn't have to wait long for that opportunity. The following Saturday afternoon, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I opened the door, Stephanie stood there with a large binder and a determined expression. Despite not having a key anymore, she had apparently decided an unannounced visit was acceptable. "I thought we could have a girls' day," she announced, brushing past me into the apartment. "I've been researching some things I think you'll be excited about." Before I could respond, she had settled on my couch and opened the binder to reveal what looked like wedding planning materials, colour swatches, venue photos, and even dress designs. "What is this?" I asked, bewildered. Stephanie beamed. "I know you're not dating anyone seriously right now, but it's never too early to start planning. These venues book up years in advance for the good dates." "Atamos?" I stared at her, unable to comprehend what was happening. "Stephanie, I'm not engaged. I'm not even in a relationship." "That's the other thing I wanted to discuss," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "I've been researching suitable young men in the area. There's a wonderful investment banker at my friend Carol's firm who I think would be perfect for you. He comes from an excellent family." My shock was quickly turning to anger. "You've been researching men for me. Of course, dating apps are so unreliable, and the type of men you usually go for." She wrinkled her nose. "Well, they're fine for now, but not husband material. Not for someone with your potential." She had almost said it. "Not for my daughter." I felt a chill run down my spine. "I've even thought about names for your future children." Stephanie continued, flipping to another section of the binder. "I've always loved the name Elizabeth for a girl, and perhaps William for a boy. Family names are so important." As she rambled on about hypothetical grandchildren, I noticed her purse on the coffee table. Something metallic glinted from inside. A key. My spare key that I thought Dad had returned when I changed the locks. "Stephanie?" I interrupted, pointing to the key. "What is that?" She glanced down and had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Oh, I had a copy made before returning the original, just in case of emergencies, you understand. I was going to surprise you by having some of these wedding ideas set up when you got home from work one day." Something inside me snapped. The months of boundary violations, the attempts to reshape my life, the clear replacement of her estranged daughter with me, it all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. "I am not your do-over daughter." I said, my voice low but firm. "I know about Amber. I know what happened between you two, and I understand now that you're trying to recreate your relationship with her through me. But I am not her. I am not your second chance. I am my own person with my own life and my own choices." Stephanie's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "How dare you bring up Amber? You don't know anything about my relationship with my daughter. I know enough. I know you controlled her until she cut you off. And now you're trying to do the same with me, rearranging my apartment, criticizing my career, picking out my clothes, even trying to choose a husband and name my hypothetical children. It has to stop." "I have only ever tried to help you," Stephanie said, her voice rising. "Everything I've done has been for your benefit. You're being ungrateful and childish, just like Amber," I finished for her. "That's exactly my point. You're not seeing me, Stephanie. You're seeing another chance to create the daughter you wanted Amber to be." Tears formed in Stephanie's eyes, but there was more anger than sadness in her expression. "You have no idea what it's like to pour everything into a child only to have them reject you. I made mistakes with Amber, yes. I pushed too hard. But I've learnt from those mistakes. Everything I've tried to do for you comes from a place of caring. If you truly cared about me, you would respect who I am, not try to turn me into who you want me to be." I took a deep breath. "I need you to give me that key, and I need you to leave. We can talk again when you're ready to have a relationship with the real me, not the do-over daughter you've created in your mind." Stephanie stared at me for a long moment, her expression hardening. Then she snatched her purse, stood up, and slammed the key down on the coffee table. "You'll regret this," she said coldly. "One day you'll understand I was only trying to help you avoid the mistakes young people make." As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I collapsed onto the couch, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with texts from Dad, clearly having heard Stephanie's version of events. "How could you throw Amber in her face like that?" his message read. She was only trying to help. You've really hurt her, Brooke. I didn't respond immediately, needing time to process what had happened. But the text continued throughout the evening, Dad's tone growing increasingly disappointed. He seemed incapable of seeing how inappropriate Stephanie's behavior had been, or understanding why I had finally reached my breaking point. The final message that night read simply, "I expected better from you. Stephanie deserves an apology." I turned off my phone feeling a profound sense of loss. For the first time in my life, I felt disconnected from my father, the person who had always been my biggest supporter. It seemed that in gaining a wife, he had lost perspective on what a healthy relationship with an adult daughter should look like. As I gathered up the wedding planning materials Stephanie had left behind, I couldn't help but wonder if this confrontation had irreparably damaged my relationship with Dad. The thought brought fresh tears, but beneath the sadness was a kernel of something else. Pride in having finally stood up for myself, and relief at having named the dynamic that had been making me so uncomfortable. Whatever happened next, I knew I had done the right thing in refusing to be anyone's do-over daughter. The week following my confrontation with Stephanie was one of the most difficult I'd experienced since my parents' divorce. Dad continued to text his messages alternating between guilt-inducing, "Stephanie cried all night," and dismissive of my feelings, "You're overreacting to someone who only wants to help." I responded minimally, not wanting to escalate the situation, but also unwilling to back down on my boundaries. By Wednesday, Dad's approach shifted to trying to arrange a reconciliation dinner where I would presumably apologize to Stephanie. When I declined explaining I needed time to process everything, he grew frustrated. "You're being stubborn, Brooke. This isn't like you." His words stung because he was right. This wasn't like me. I had always been the peacekeeper, the one who accommodated others to avoid conflict. But I was learning that sometimes peace came at too high a price, namely my autonomy and sense of self. With my family situation in turmoil, I decided to seek professional help. The company I worked for offered an employee assistance program that included therapy sessions. I made an appointment with a counsellor named Dr. Winters for Friday afternoon. Dr. Winters was a woman in her 50s with a calm demeanour that immediately put me at ease. As I recounted the situation with Stephanie and my dad, she listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "What you're describing sounds like what we call surrogate role assignment," she explained when I finished. Sometimes when people have unresolved issues with someone in their life, they unconsciously try to work through those issues with someone else who seems similar or is in a similar relationship position. "So Stephanie is trying to resolve her issues with Amber through me?" I asked. "It's possible. The behavior you've described, the controlling tendencies, the attempts to reshape your life choices, even the comments about not making the same mistakes, suggest she's trying to rewrite her relationship with her daughter by creating what she considers a successful relationship with you. But that's not fair to me." "No, it's not," Dr. Winters agreed. "And it's important that you've recognized it and set boundaries. That took courage." We spent the rest of the session discussing healthy boundaries and how to maintain them while still preserving my relationship with Dad if possible. Dr. Winters suggested I write him a letter expressing my feelings clearly and calmly without the emotional charge of a face-to-face conversation. That weekend, I took her advice and spent hours drafting and redrafting a letter to Dad. I explained how Stephanie's behavior had made me feel provided specific examples of boundary violations and emphasized that I wasn't rejecting them, just asking for respect as an adult with my own life choices. "I miss our relationship, Dad," I wrote toward the end. "I miss the way we could talk about anything. I want us to find a way forward, but it has to include respect for who I am, not who Stephanie wishes I would be." I mailed the letter Monday morning, unsure if it would make any difference, but feeling better for having expressed my thoughts clearly. Later that week, I had lunch with my mum, something we did monthly to stay connected. I hadn't told her much about the situation with Stephanie, not wanting to put her in an awkward position, but she noticed something was wrong immediately. "You seem troubled, honey," she said as we settled at our usual table at her favourite bistro. "Is everything okay?" The genuine concern in her voice broke something loose in me, and I found myself telling her everything. Stephanie's escalating behaviour, Dad's enabling responses, and the final confrontation. Mum listened without interrupting her expression, growing increasingly concerned. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I've been worried about this for a while," she admitted. "I noticed how Stephanie looked at you at your dad's birthday dinner last year, like she was trying to claim you somehow. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to seem like the jealous ex-wife, and I thought your dad would recognize what was happening. You've seen it too. The validation was surprisingly powerful. Mum nodded. Brooke, when you were growing up, the hardest but most important lesson I learned as a parent was that my job wasn't to create you in my image, but to help you become your authentic self. It sounds like Stephanie never learned that lesson with her own daughter, and now she's trying to rewrite that story with you. But you're not a story to be rewritten. You're your own author. Her words brought tears to my eyes. Dad doesn't see it. He thinks I'm being ungrateful and difficult. Your father has always had a blind spot when it comes to the women he loves, Mum said gently. Give him time. He's a good man at heart, and he loves you. Eventually, he'll see what's happening. 3 days later, Dad texted asking if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. I suggested a quiet cafe near my apartment, neutral territory, where we could talk privately. When I arrived, Dad was already there, looking more tired than I'd seen him in years. He stood to hug me, and I felt a surge of hope at the familiar warmth in his embrace. I got your letter, he said once we were seated with our coffees. I've read it several times, actually. And, I asked, trying to keep the anxiety from my voice. Dad sighed heavily. I've been thinking a lot about what you wrote about Stephanie's behavior and my response to it. I didn't want to see it, Brooke. It was easier to believe she was just being enthusiastic about building a relationship with you than to acknowledge there might be something unhealthy happening. Why? I asked, genuinely curious. Because then I'd have to confront the fact that I've been enabling her, that in trying to make my new marriage work, I've been letting my daughter down. His voice broke slightly. I'm sorry, Brookie. I should have listened to you sooner. Relief washed over me, but I was still cautious. What changed your mind? After I got your letter, I started paying more attention to how Stephanie talks about you. You were right. She often refers to you in ways that remind me of how she used to talk about Amber. And when I asked her more about what happened with Amber... He paused, looking troubled. It turns out, there's a lot more to that story than she initially told me. Amber didn't just cut contact because they had different ideas about her future. Stephanie had been increasingly controlling, reading Amber's emails, tracking her location, even trying to break up her relationship with a boyfriend Stephanie deemed unsuitable. When Amber left for Europe, it was less a gap year and more an escape. I was shocked by the revelation, but also struck by the parallels to my own experience. The invasion of privacy, the attempts to control relationships and career choices. That doesn't sound so different from how she's been with me, I said quietly. Dad nodded, looking pained. I know, and I'm truly sorry I didn't see it sooner. I think I was so happy to have found someone after being alone for years that I was willing to overlook things I shouldn't have. So what happens now? I asked. I've told Stephanie that her behavior toward you has to change if she wants to have any relationship with you going forward. I've also suggested we see a marriage counselor to work through these issues. This pattern with her daughter and now with you. It's not healthy and it's hurting all of us. I felt a profound sense of relief that Dad finally understood, but also concern about the road ahead. And she agreed to counselling reluctantly, Dad admitted. She still believes she was just trying to help you, but she's willing to talk to someone. I think deep down, she knows she crossed lines she shouldn't have. I don't know if I'm ready to see her again just yet, I said honestly. I understand and I won't pressure you. Take the time you need. Just know that I love you, Brooke. And I'm going to work on being the dad you deserve again. The one who supports you as you are not as someone else wants you to be. As we finished our coffees, Dad asked about my work and my friends, showing genuine interest in my life in a way that had been missing during the months of Stephanie drama. It felt like a small step back toward the relationship we used to have, and I left our meeting feeling cautiously optimistic for the first time in weeks. 3 months passed before I felt ready to see Stephanie again. During that time, Dad and I rebuilt our relationship through weekly coffee meetings and phone calls, where we carefully avoided discussing Stephanie beyond general updates that she was continuing with therapy. I resumed Sunday dinners with him with the understanding that they would be just the two of us for now. In those months, I focused on my own healing and self-discovery. I continued seeing Dr. Winters working through the lingering effects of having my boundaries repeatedly violated. I had never realized how exhausting it had been to constantly defend my choices and my space until I no longer had to do it. At work, I thrived taking on larger projects and even mentoring a new designer. My confidence, which had been subtly eroded by Stephanie's constant criticism, returned stronger than before. I redecorated my apartment exactly as I wanted it, embracing my eclectic style, with no concern for anyone else's opinion. My friendships deepened too. Madison and Tyler had stood by me through the whole ordeal, offering support and perspective when I needed it most. We celebrated my liberation, as Madison jokingly called it, with a weekend trip to the coast, where we hiked, ate too much seafood, and stayed up late, talking about our dreams and fears. When Dad finally asked if I would consider meeting with him and Stephanie, I felt strong enough to say yes. We agreed to meet at a restaurant rather than their home, neutral territory where I could leave if things became uncomfortable. Stephanie looked different somehow when I saw her. Less polished, more authentic. The perfectly styled hair and impeccable outfit were replaced by a simpler look. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her napkin as I sat down. "Thank you for coming, Brooke," she said, her voice lacking its usual confident tone. "I know it can't have been an easy decision. I'm here because Dad says you've been working on things," I replied neutrally, "and because despite everything I do, care about both of you." Dad gave me an encouraging smile before Stephanie spoke again. "I've been in therapy both with your father and on my own," she began. "It's been challenging, but enlightening. I've had to confront some difficult truths about myself and my parenting style." I nodded but didn't respond, waiting to hear more. "The way I treated you was wrong," she continued. "My therapist helped me see that I've been trying to use you to fix my mistakes with Amber. It wasn't fair to you, and I'm truly sorry." Her apology seemed genuine, but I remained cautious. "What specifically are you sorry for?" Stephanie looked startled by the direct question, but answered after a moment. "I'm sorry for not respecting your boundaries, for trying to change you instead of accepting who you are, for entering your home without permission and trying to rearrange your life to fit my vision, for contacting your workplace." She paused. "Most of all, I'm sorry for not seeing you as Brooke, a unique, capable adult with your own identity. Instead, I saw you as an opportunity to rewrite my failures as a mother." Her acknowledgement was more specific and insightful than I had expected, suggesting the therapy had indeed made an impact. "Thank you for that," I said. "It means a lot to hear you recognize those things." "I can't promise I'll never slip up," Stephanie added. "These patterns are deeply ingrained, but I'm committed to doing better, to being more aware of when I'm overstepping." Dad, who had remained silent during this exchange, reached out to hold both our hands. "We're taking it day by day. The counselling has helped us communicate better too. I'm learning to speak up when I see concerning behaviour rather than trying to keep the peace at all costs." Over dinner, we talked cautiously, sticking to safe topics like Dad's work and a new restaurant that had opened downtown. When Stephanie asked about my latest projects, she actually listened to my answers without offering unsolicited advice, a small but significant change. As we were finishing dessert, Stephanie said something that surprised me. "I've written to Amber." "You have?" I couldn't hide my surprise. She nodded, not expecting a response or reconciliation, just to apologize for the ways I failed to respect her as her own person. My therapist thought it might be healing for me, regardless of whether she ever reads it or responds. "That sounds like a positive step," I said carefully. "It was your courage in standing up to me that inspired it," Stephanie admitted. "You helped me see what I couldn't or wouldn't see before." As we left the restaurant, Stephanie asked if she could hug me. It was the first time she had asked permission for anything, and the significance wasn't lost on me. I nodded, and her embrace was gentle without the possessive quality it had held before. "Thank you for giving us another chance," she whispered. Over the following months, we slowly rebuilt a relationship. Not the mother-daughter dynamic Stephanie had tried to force, but something new and healthier. We discovered we actually had some genuine common interests, like historical documentaries and gardening, which we could enjoy without the undercurrent of control that had poisoned our previous interactions. Dad and Stephanie continued their counselling, and I occasionally joined them for family sessions, where we worked on communication and boundary setting. Stephanie still sometimes slipped into old patterns, suggesting changes to my appearance or questioning my choices, but now Dad would gently point it out, and she would catch herself and apologize. The most meaningful change came 6 months after our confrontation. I had been offered a promotion at work that would involve more client interaction and creative direction, exactly the career path I had always wanted. When I shared the news during dinner at their house, Stephanie's response was a simple, "Congratulations, Brooke. You've earned it through your talent and hard work. No suggestions for alternative careers, no backhanded compliments, just genuine support for my chosen path." It was in that moment I truly believed healing was possible. Looking back on this journey, I've learned so much about standing up for myself and the importance of being seen for who I truly am. There's a profound freedom in refusing to be molded into someone else's ideal and instead embracing your authentic self with all its unique qualities and choices. I've come to understand that Stephanie's behavior was never really about me. it was about her own unresolved pain and regrets. While that doesn't excuse her actions, it helped me find compassion for her without sacrificing my own needs and boundaries. As for my relationship with Dad, it's stronger now than before this all began. His willingness to acknowledge his role in enabling Stephanie's behavior and his commitment to supporting me, as I am not as someone else wants me to be, restored my faith in our bond. I share this story because I know many of you have faced similar situations. People in your life who try to remake you in their image or use you to fulfill their own unmet needs. It can be incredibly difficult to recognize what's happening and even harder to stand against it, especially when it comes from someone who claims to care about you. But you are not anyone's do-over project or second chance. You are your own person with the right to define your own identity and make your own choices. Standing in that truth might cost you relationships or create conflict, but the freedom and authenticity you gain are worth it. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't see the real you? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your voice and standing your ground. Thank you for listening, and remember, the only person you need to be is yourself.